Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm just gonna be convincing you that I wrote the best book ever, and obviously I'm being a little facetious, so don't come for me. But as an artist, my job in part is to persuade people to buy my work. So today I'm gonna be doing that by making you think that I literally have the best poetry collection of my generation without you having even read it yet. So I think this will be really fun. Hope you guys have fun. I just want this to be a little fun for everybody. But first, look, I finally have these books. They're so pretty and you should get one. Okay, I'm gonna read this. This is a poem. This whole thing is one poem. Well, it's part of a poem that's in here. I'm just gonna read it for you guys. Ready? The light was yours, but the glass was mine, stained with aurora's glow, and figured like the rippling sea, softening your glare to paint a picture you could have never colored on your own. That's one of my poems. That happens to be the title poem because once you get there, I think it reflects a lot of the overarching story. But anyway, first and foremost, why is this the best book ever, Zoe? Convince me. I'm not convinced. I'll convince you right now. In my last video, I talked about the fact that these images, the internal images, have their own special lore. So let's start with that. As I showed you a little bit last time, I have drawings in here that, that kind of just appear throughout the book. These drawings are really fun and unique to me because they aren't just things that I drew when I was just thinking about the poem. I didn't just read the poem and be like, okay, I mentioned, I don't know, a dragon there, let me draw a dragon. I mentioned a flower there, let me draw the flower. They're not just off the cuff doodles. That's not what they are. Every single internal drawing in here is a reference to another piece of work that I appreciate and that also somehow relates, reflects, or has the same feeling of that other piece of art that it references. So it's like me as a creative, as an artist, nodding to the artists, the creators who came before me, who have inspired me, who I see myself thinking through their lenses when I'm writing, when I'm creating. I just think that's literally so much fun, both as a creator and also as a consumer, as a reader. These are Easter eggs for you guys. Can you tell what this is a reference to? I think some of them are definitely more obvious than others. There's a wide range of medium artist time periods in here. Some drawings reference other poems and poets, some reference songs, songwriters, some reference books, paintings, stories. There's a whole lot in here. And let me tell you, these are all things that are based on things that I feel I've been affected by. So they're all of people or works that I'm a fan of, literally spanning from pre-Shakespearean times, literally tens and thousands of years ago, to a year ago. I just have such range in my tastes. I wanted to reflect that in here somehow. There's 20, I think, drawings in here. I might have cut one, so it might be 19. So I made a chart of the work that I was referencing, what I would draw to represent that work, who the creator was of that work, and then what poem I would attach that to. I don't know. This is literally one of my favorite things about this book, and I knew that no one would catch it unless I told you that it's in there, so I really hope people like that. Okay, moving on to number 2, my second reason why this is the best poetry book ever. Okay, so one thing that I love about poetry that I think is missing in a lot of the poetry that we see floating around on the internet these days is the art of how do I say confusion, but not in a bad way. I love riddles, and I think that some of the best poetry historically is poetry that is you have to think about. I love riddles. So many of my poems are they feel like riddles as much as they are poems. That is so fun to me. It's literally so fun. It's so fun to write, so fun to read. I just love figuring that stuff out. So yeah, the art of indirectness, I'll say, the art of subtlety. It's not just, I'm sad today because you hurt my feelings, and now I feel like I am bleeding, blah, 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 blah. It's not like that. It's so layered. It's so layered. Speaking of layers, another thing that I'm really proud to have done with this piece is that I wanted every single poem to be able to stand by itself as a poem. And I also wanted all of the poems to work together as one poem. So think about like in like the Homer times, like the Odyssey, the Iliad, like those books are actually poems. They're called poems. In their original language, they're poems, they're rhymes, they're stories, but they're poems. That is exactly the structure I wanted to embody. Let's bring that back. I think that's great. I think it's classic, and I did it. And why I think this book will appeal to people who don't usually like read poetry is because there's a narrative arc. Like in the same way that fiction has a beginning, middle, and end, this has a beginning, middle, and end. It has rising action, it has falling action, it has tension, it has climax, it has all of those things. It's not just a collection of poems, you know? They go together. I don't know how else to explain it, but I'm getting excited. I need to calm down. As a part of creating this narrative arc, I created characters that recur throughout the poems. So like I refer to myself as a flower, the main character. She's a flower. And one of the other main characters, the love interest, I guess, is the sun. And there's an interesting relationship between the flower and the sun that carries on throughout the story. And it's not just random. Like the objects that I chose aren't chosen randomly. I chose them because of also how these things operate in real life, how these things function in real life. In real life, a flower does have a relationship with the sun, and the sun does provide and do things for a flower. In my poetry, like these things represent real people, but the relationship dynamics that exist both for those people in real life who I'm talking about, and also for those things in real life that have this actual dynamic and relationship, those are all reflected into this story, into these poems. And I don't know, that's why I keep saying like it's layered. That's my favorite thing about this book. There's so many layers. I just think it makes for a really dynamic reading experience. Another layer to add, this book also it kind of has a dual POV, which I don't think I've ever seen that in a poetry book before. If you'll notice, some of these poems are indented on the left side of the page. They start on the left side of the page. Some of the poems start on the right side of the page. That shift is actually two different points of view. It's two different perspectives. And one of the perspectives is the speaker in their present tense, the speaker living their lives. The other point of view is like a narrator from the future who like has seen the story, has seen how everything ends, has seen how it goes, and can now like comment on the present speaker's experience as someone with more knowledge and with more maturity. This structure really works for me for a couple of reasons. One, just like from a writing perspective. I mentioned before, like I wrote all these poems based on real life experiences, based on things that I was actually feeling and going through. We all know like healing isn't linear, like processing isn't linear. Life comes at you fast. So when I was experiencing things, I was writing poems about them like in the moment. But it took months and months and months and months of reflection to like actually process things that had happened to me. I could write a poem like one day about something that happened to me, something that I was feeling that day, and then I would learn new information 6 or 7 months later, and then I would have something new to say about that thing that happened to me. And then 6 or 7 months later from learning the new information, I would have like processed it differently. It would have sat with me differently, and now I have an entirely new take on that thing that happened to me now a year ago. So it was necessary for me for all of those different feelings, all of those different developments to make it into this story, because it is a story of processing, developing, changing perspectives in a way, and that had to be included for me. And it couldn't all just be thrown at the end. Like that didn't make sense to me. I don't know, there's some exchanges in here that are really fun to me, because it'll have like me from like 2 years ago being like, I want this so bad, I blah blah blah, I feel like this. And then the new perspective basically being like, girl, stand up, be so for real. Or me being like, I hate myself, I hate everyone, blah blah blah. And then new perspective being like, I don't know, can we blame her for that? Like, she might be onto something. The narrator simultaneously signals to the reader that like, okay, we know this girl's being a little delusional. We know she's being a little delusional. But at the same time, it'll also signal to the reader like, okay, I know you might think she's being ridiculous, but let's wait a second and think about what you would do in this situation. I love this narrator character because it's always bringing things back into the balance from either the speaker or the reader, like whoever the narrator thinks might be like jumping out of line or like reading things the wrong way or something like that. The narrator is always like pushing back or pulling back, which I think is just, I think that's really cool. And I can't believe that I thought of that and that was my idea. That I'm so cool and smart and amazing. I can't believe it. Anyway, sorry. There's so many entendres, so many multiple meanings in this, and that is what poetry is really all about. I remember when I was writing this, I wrote this the first time and I was like insecure. I was like, wait, do I actually know how to be a poet? Do I actually know? Like, I've never really taken a poetry class. I read poetry, but no one's ever really critiqued my poetry. So I was just getting insecure when I was like about to publish this. And then I was like, okay, let me just take a class. So I literally took an online class, learned all about like basically why poetry is the way it is, form-wise, structure-wise. That's really it. Poetry is all about form and structure. And both of those things are very important to the art of poetry. Because I was doing a lot of things that I see done in poetry and that just felt natural to me, but I didn't know why. Like, I didn't know why I was doing them. Like, I was like, am I cosplaying something? I don't know. Once I learned, oh no, there's like a rhetorical reason for why I'm inclined to write things the way that I write them. Like, Zoe, you actually know what you're doing and you didn't have to be taught how to do that, and now you can go be secure. You don't have to be insecure about like your ability. Anyway, so I want to read you this poem by Emily Dickinson. This is so random. I wasn't planning on doing this. But basically, like, after I'd written like so many of my riddle poems or like had so many entendres or like, I don't know, been indirect in some ways, I was like, this feels right, but I don't know. Since I've been in school forever, I'm like, I need a hard reason for why I'm doing something, or else I'm scared that I'm doing it wrong. So in my poetry class, I read this poem by Emily Dickinson called Tell All the Truth But Tell It Slant. And I'm gonna read it, and if you don't, and then I'll explain it because it needs to be explained. Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies, too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise. As lightning to the children eased, with explanation kind, the truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind. Okay, you probably didn't get that. I'm not gonna lie, you probably didn't get that, but let me explain. Just give me 30 seconds to explain. So basically, she's saying tell all the truth, but tell it slant. So basically, tell your truth, but tell it not directly. Tell it slant. Let it be slant. Okay, let's get into why. Success in circuit lies. Success in circuit. She's saying success in not going straight lies. Okay, why? Too bright for our infirm delight, the truth's superb surprise. Okay, so this is a little like old-timey language, so let me just translate it a little bit. Basically what she's saying is sometimes the truth can be so surprising, the truth's superb surprise, it can be so shocking that it's actually too much for us to take in if we tell it directly, if we tell it in a straight line and not in a circuit. Does that make sense? Okay, let me keep going. As lightning to the children eased, with explanation kind. She's just giving an example here. So when lightning strikes and you're explaining to a kid like what is lightning, you don't give them like the definition, like the textbook definition of lightning, because the kid's gonna look at you like, I don't know what that is. Like, what are you saying? Electrons, blah blah blah. Like, no, that's not how you explain things to someone who is not equipped to handle that information. Does that make sense? Am I making sense? Because this poem, anyway, so good. The truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind. That one I think speaks for itself. Like, if you give too much too soon, too fast, before the people are ready, every man be blind. Like, it's not, literally the people can't handle it. The people can't take it. So tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Anyway, so this poem literally changed how I think about poetry, but not really. It just gave me the confidence that I was like, oh, I'm doing this right. Like, I'm telling my truth and I'm telling it slant, as in not direct. I don't really see a lot of that in modern poetry. I think it's a little bit of a lost art. And I'm not even just thinking about poetry now. I'm thinking about songwriting, thinking about rapping, I'm thinking about all these things that stem from poetry. The art of euphemism, indirectness, entendre, subtlety, Those things are they're being lost a little bit, and we need to hold on to them. We need to hold on to them. There is so much value in those things. Let me move on. You guys see me geeking out right now. You see me nerding out. That's how you know I'm a real poet. That's how you know I'm a real poet. We're almost done. We're almost done. Lastly, not lastly, the themes in this book, I think also are what make it like so good. It's not just about one thing. A lot of poetry books, and again, there's no problem with this. I'm just tooting my own horn here because that's what I have to do. a lot of poetry books like are centered on one theme, like love, heartbreak, death, loss, like one theme. My collection has a lot of different themes. There's a lot of stuff going on. Yes, there's love, but it's not just romantic love. Yes, there's heartbreak, but it's not just romantic heartbreak. I mentioned this in my last video, but it's loss, it's betrayal, it's self-doubt, it's insecurity, it's community. It's one day I'll get into like the racial not undertones, but like the racial context that very heavily influenced my experience, and that is in this, but it's not really in this. Like if you don't know what's going on, you're not going to realize that race has anything to do with this, but it does. Of course it does. I'm a Black woman. Like it's going to have to do with literally everything that I ever create ever. But it's not at all obvious. Like this is not a book about race. Race is never mentioned, anything close to it. Like it doesn't feel like that at all. But there's just a lot. There's so many layers. Yeah, so sorry I got sidetracked, but racial dynamics also a thing. And like I said, I think I'm able to have so many themes so successfully. I think it works because at the end of the day, this is a narrative, this is a story. So it's not like I wrote all my poems about love or death or existentialism and made a collection of poems about those things. No, it's not like that. It's a book. So last thing that makes me really happy about this book is just how it was created. I really like and value using people that I know for everything. Like I think keeping like money and talent as close to you as possible is really good and valuable, because most of the time, at least like for me, like there's always going to be someone who wants to be doing what I need done. So like for example, my cover art, a girl that I went to in high school did this. I knew that she's an artist. I didn't know she wanted to like book covers, but when I reached out to her, she was like, oh my gosh, that's actually exactly what I want to break into and what I want to be doing. So I'm just really happy that I was able to like use someone local, use someone that I know to like pay to do this, because duh, that's so cool. And I could have just gotten some random person in some big company to like do it, but that would not have been nearly as cool, wouldn't have been nearly as personal. And then secondly, my publisher is actually my sister, which I think is so cool. My sister, she studied music business and music publishing in college, so she knew like already about, sorry that looks weird, she knew already about like copyright and publishing rights and like doing all those things. And when I was like, I'm about to publish this book, she was like, what if I did it? I was like, I think that's a great idea. And again, like it's one of those things where it's like she needed a job, I need a publisher. We don't have to go to like the big guy for doing all these things. And I think like more of that, more like keeping our resources local. Like I would much rather pay my sister $65 than a multi-billion-dollar company, you know? So that's the last thing that I'm just really proud of about this work, is how it came together. Yeah, I tried to make this not too long, but I'm glad that it was kind of long, because now you can see there's so many reasons for why this is literally the best book of poetry ever. And hopefully now you've been convinced that you should obviously get it right now. It actually just also became an ebook today. I'm partial to the paperback version because who doesn't love a paperback book? But there is an ebook version. It's literally just basically like a PDF of this. So if you like prefer ebook for some reason, you can get on your Kindle, tablet, whatever. Also on Amazon. They're both on Amazon. I guess that's it. Okay, so yeah, please let me know if you have any questions. I guess maybe I'll do a Q&A on my Instagram someday. Maybe next week I'll do a Q&A. I really like talking about this, and I want to use my next few weeks where I'm not like working or doing anything to do justice to this work that I put in. This is the work that I want to be doing at the end of the day. So I'm really grateful to be doing it right now. And I'm grateful to you guys for keeping up with me. Okay, love you guys. I will talk to you soon. Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.